It's always fun to go back in time. Power of the Daleks. Now this will be the first of what will hopefully become a semi-regular fixture on this channel, which is my reviewing classic era Doctor Who stories. Now I have seen a few in my time. I've still got a lot of others to get through, and as I see them, I do plan to do reviews on them. But I get to do something a little bit special here because Power of the Daleks premiered very recently. Now, this is an older story. It's in fact the very first second Doctor story, but it has been lost. I mean, the video footage does not exist anymore, but all the audio survived. So between that, some still images and script notes and what they know the thing was supposed to look like, BBC has put together an animated version using all the original audio, and that was presented ahead of this past Christmas's Doctor Who Christmas special. So, Power of the Daleks, what do I think? It's pretty good. I mean, it's dated in a way that a lot of older Doctor Who is, i.e. you've got things like, we only have maybe a dozen characters, but they try and tell you there's this whole colony of people, so you kind of feel the constraints of the budget. It's one of the 6-part stories, so you can feel that they stretched it a little thinner than it probably should have been. I think a 4-part story would have been fine. And in what feels a little bit like a holdover from the tail end of the first Doctor's tenure, the Doctor himself kind of gets taken out of commission a little bit. He gets jailed at one point. There are lengthy stretches where we don't get a whole ton of him. And I think part of that is also due to the fact that they kind of overcomplicated the story going on in the location where he and his companions have ended up, and then trying to explain all that and untangle the web of motivations of everybody who's already there kind of just necessitates sidelining the Doctor a little. But as far as what the plot is, this is, as I said, the first story following the regeneration of the first Doctor into the second. And he and his 2 companions, Ben and Polly, who are companions I'm not particularly familiar with, but they land on this planet Vulcan, and I don't think they ever specify the time period, but it presumes some sort of future, relative to where we are. And Vulcan is a colony with some sort of twisty internal politics going on, and in the middle of this, a scientist has discovered a capsule, and inside are 3 Daleks that appear to be dead, but Daleks. And so a scientist fascinated by this discovery is trying to get them reactivated, while the Doctor is desperately trying to get anyone around to listen to him to explain that these things must be destroyed. Now, one of the first things that I caught that was really interesting was realizing how much has been intentionally borrowed from, this episode and classic Doctor Who in general in New Doctor Who. I mean, very specifically, the Daleks going, "I am your servant," which got reused in Victory of the Daleks. So I immediately recognized that. It made me appreciate Victory of the Daleks a little bit more, that they brought that back and recycled it. And I mean, I catch it sometimes when they do that, like the whole Daleks are the masters of Earth that was used in The Stolen Earth. That was a callback to some classic Doctor Who. So I like when I learn more stuff that has been repurposed and been called back to in the new series, and that's always fun for me to discover. It was really interesting to see how kind of fully formed the notion of regeneration seemed to be right out of the gate. And by that, I just find it really interesting that they seem to know well enough to be very vague and loose about it in terms of explaining exactly what happened and exactly why and how the Doctor is different. We can very clearly see, but at points the Doctor refers to the past Doctor as the Doctor, doesn't even really refer to himself at all, and you're like, what is going on? And he's figuring out, his new self, and he gets a hold of the little pipe, and he's got this ridiculous hat at one point, but he's off by just a little bit, and he knows he's off by a little bit, and just all of the wonkiness that we have come to expect from Regeneration. It's just fascinating for me to find out now by getting to see this, that was all there right from the beginning. There's stuff that I don't know if I had actually intellectually thought about it, but I always kind of assumed must have been added in later and refined as the show went on. But to realize how much stuff this series nailed right out of the gate back in the 60s, it's just wonderful. As I said, though, the story is kind of a product of its time, but if you like classic era Doctor Who, you'll probably find something to enjoy in this. It's hard to recommend as any kind of early look into classic Doctor Who for people who are more up to date on New Who but haven't gone back into the classic era so far. And part of the reason for that is I think doing it animated hurts it a little bit. Now, having said that, I don't regret that they did it animated. I would much rather see it animated in this fashion than not see it at all. But it's very, very limited animation. It's very obvious that they didn't spend a whole ton of money on this animation. And you get used to it in terms of, you know, if you watch any sort of chunky animation for long, if you just kind of get used to it and you roll with it. But where it falls down is that there will be shots and there will be moments that nothing really happens, and you know that in the live action that would have been the actor's chance to do something, you know, with their face, and you really get a read on, you know, what's going on, you know, what are they thinking, But with these really rigid, barely moving facial expressions that are really kind of locked in, they have them look back and forth, and that's about it. And you really, you feel those pauses a lot more than you're supposed to, because obviously with real actors, they would have been able to communicate more in their physical performance that, you know, they didn't have the budget to do that level of animation and that level of nuance. And so that kind of hurts a little bit versus if we actually still had the real footage. Again, though, if you are sort of used to the pacing of classic Doctor Who, and if you enjoy that at all, definitely check this out if you missed it. So those are my thoughts on Power of the Daleks. Did you see it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that little bell down there so you get notifications when new stuff goes up. Follow me on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Check out the Council of Geeks podcast available on iTunes and Stitcher. I put links down in the descriptions for those. And until next time, this council is adjourned.